So welcome everybody to our Learn June 16th presentation of Navigating Your Path to Retirement. And I'm so pleased to have with us today Peggy Farnworth. Before I introduce Peggy here, I just want to do a quick overview. What Learn is: lifelong education and aging resource network. And we're an Idaho-based nonprofit organization with the mission to provide community education on aging and caregiving topics. And now we have like over 90 of them on our website.
Wow.
Learn is a leaders network of the Society of Certified Senior Advisors, or CSA. And the CSA organization is also focused on educating and certifying professionals who work with seniors. We have a slight disclaimer today, and every day we do this class. This content is provided for general information purposes only and not to be considered legal, financial, or health advice. Please consult with your professional service provider in these areas before taking action based on this topic, this class today. Though we know Peggy is an expert in her field, good to check in with your own. Today, I would like to introduce Oasis Senior Advisors, one of our two sponsors for this quarter and the previous quarter. We're so appreciative of senior Oasis Senior Advisors and A Mind for All Seasons. They allow us to bring this training to all of you free of charge. And our presenter today, I am so pleased to introduce my friend, professional, and fellow Learn member, Peggy Farnworth, Boise retirement coach. Could you introduce yourself for me today?
Thank you. So I am hoping that you have been into the website to get the handout that's available to you. It will make your note-taking much easier. So if you want to do next slide, we are going to be talking about retirement and the transition into retirement and where you might be in that process. Next slide. So my experience has been 30 years in the industry, but it's been the last 10 years that I have been focused on retirement specifically, not just the financial side and retirement projections and the transitioning into, but it is the holistic approach to what are you going to do? What are your values? How are you going to blend spouses' decisions and activities together? Because there is a spike in divorces 2 to 3 years into both spouses being retired. So it is something that you don't walk into lightly if you want to have success at it. You wouldn't think it would be so hard, but I just got in an email today that Lee Iacocca said that his first 3 years of retirement were more stressful to him than the 47 years of working in the car industry. That means that he had his money in place, but he didn't have a plan in place to replace what he was going to do with his time. So 30 years in the industry, having an opportunity to work with people and their monies and learning many of the intricacies that is involved there. I do have my CPA and the CFP. I did the Certified Senior Advisor designation back in like 2002 or 3, somewhere in there, because of the awareness we had the baby boomer generation coming into retirement. And there is a lot of planning that needs to go along with that. The aging process can be done gracefully if it's done with a plan. So that is one of the reasons that I do have a change in my where my brokerage is being able to be at a brokerage that will let me use the CSA designation. So I am actually at Cambridge at this point in time, just made that move earlier this year. Next slide. Okay, so this, that's about me. This is now going to be about you. And I don't know, do we just have a handful that are actually on
We have like 6 total people live out of 15 registered, so, or 17 registered, including presenters. So yes, it's just a few, Peggy.
Okay, so, well, this is going to be pretty obvious then. So the next slide, please. Then, because I kind of want to know where people are at in the process of retirement, how close you are to being ready to retire. That's kind of apparent by age. So if you can put in, do we have a place to put questions?
In the chat, people can just answer
Yeah,
the
okay.
question.
All right, so if you will give me an idea. Okay, we have a 1C, 1D. Is there
Couple of
any
D's, a couple of D's, a couple of C's, and an A and a B.
We're all over the board, except for an E. Okay. Okay. Well, if you have questions that I'm not specifically addressing, don't hesitate to put a question in the chat room. Okay. So next slide. The big question about retirement is, click, how much do I need? And the answer, next slide, is click, it depends. And it depends on a whole host of items. It depends on what your living expenses are. So if I have one client that's very frugal and spends about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, I have another client that we did retirement projections, and I said, okay, I think you can do it about $8,000 a month. And they locked onto that. And now we have a down market. They retired 2 years sooner. And so we're kind of adjusting what we're doing because of it's not the best time to be pulling money out of their 401k. So it does depend on what your income needs are. When you retire, again, just in that example, the client retired.
Anticipating you.
The client retired sooner than I expected, which means that you'll need to have more monies. And if you retire later, then you'll need to have less monies. And some people choose to work part-time, and that will offset living expenses. And then also you have to take a look at what your longevity is. Some people are going to probably, be 70s, maybe into their 80s. And then I have 2 or 3 clients that are in their 90s. So longevity is a very key piece of planning for, especially in the long-term care issues. And then the return on investment. I use a 6 to 8% goal for a 10-year average, which the last few years was trailing pretty high. We were running like 10 and 12%, but we now have a real downturn in the market. So we're going to be back to the 6 to 8% because you usually have the highs and the lows. In a time period within even a decade, you'll see highs and lows. So I use that as a conservative figure for return. If you try to use a higher, it means you need less money. If you use lower, you'll need more money. Okay, next slide. All right, so we're going to take a look at tools and behaviors that will be beneficial for you at any stage in the game. And you can implement them at any point in time. You don't have to feel like, hey, I am behind in my retirement preparation, and you can make changes and differences right now, today. What I am going to encourage you to do, you may come, as we go through these things, you may say, oh, I already do that. Well, kudos, that's great. Or you may say, maybe I should adjust that. I would just encourage you to find 3 things that you can implement into your strategy for retirement. Because it's great to do education, but education is not effective unless you put it into place, put it into practice. So I'm just going to encourage you as you're going through this and you have an aha moment to write it down and figure out something that you can do to give yourself a start date of when you're going to begin that. Next step, next slide. So tools that help. Click. Compound interest is very beneficial. We'll discuss that a little further. That is a good tool. Click. Retirement plans, if you have one that's being offered from your workplace, that is a really great way to be saving and earning your dollars, putting them aside for retirement, because it's not, you don't bring it in home and it's out of your paycheck. It's not dollars you see, so it's a lot easier to save. Click. And then you want to get the employer match. Click. Health savings account is another model for saving towards retirement. You can put the dollars into your health savings account, and you don't have to use that. You can still pay out of pocket if you choose to, but you can use your health savings account to save dollars towards your retirement opportunity and use it for medical expenses at that point in time. Next, click. So then you also have catch-up contributions. If you happen to be over 50, you can make additional dollars, add additional dollars into your retirement accounts and your health savings account. And next slide. So compound interest. Albert Einstein said that compound interest was the greatest invention the world has ever produced. And we're going to take a look at why that works for you. Next slide. So we have Megan, who saved $100 a month for her first 10 years at 7%. And then she held the monies for the next 10 years at 7%. So she saved right away, and then she took a pause. And she, in that 20-year period, she had paid in $12,000. And at the end of 20 years, she had $35,536 with a 7% earning factor. Now, Jennifer spent, instead of saving in her first 10 years, which is pretty common to see happen if you're getting out of college, trying to get a house established, getting a car, all of those types of things, there is a tendency not to save. There's always something you want to be buying. So then you can, and if you think you're going to catch it up later and save more, like Jennifer did here, she saved $200 a month for the next 10 years. And so she had, at the end of her 20 years, she had $35,000 that she had accumulated, pretty comparable to Megan as far as the end result. However, Megan spent $12,000 and Jennifer spent $24,000. That's the difference in time value of money and compounding interest working for you. And that's what you want to be focused on. Okay, next, click. All right, so retirement plans. You have a 401k or a 403b if you're a nonprofit, such as a hospital or a school. Simple plans you might find with a employer, smaller sized employer, and a SEP plan may also come with a smaller sized employer. But you want to at least put in the minimum contribution to secure the company match, and you want to consider maximizing your contribution so that you have reduce your taxes and accumulate more. And then you have the catch-up provision for those that are 50 years and over. For a 401k and 403b, it's $6,000. And for an IRA and a Roth is an additional $1,000.
Peggy, can I just, it's $6,000 in addition to your maximum per year?
No, it's $6,000 in addition to the $18,500 that you are allowed to contribute. And if you're over 50, then you can put in $24,500.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next slide. Okay. So if you don't have the opportunity to contribute into a retirement plan, you can make your own. Or if you want to do additional dollars, you may have the opportunity to do that in a traditional IRA or perhaps a Roth IRA. But the difference between the two, a traditional IRA, you're going to be getting a tax deduction when you make the contribution. The earnings are not taxable as they accumulate, but when they are dispersed, they do become taxable. A Roth IRA, you are paying the taxes on the monies that's contributed. You do not get a deduction. They also get to be earned tax-free, and then when they are dispersed, they come out tax-free. So you're paying tax either on the seed or on the harvest. I like a Roth option in all my retirement plan situations. It's nice to have a bucket that you can take money out of that is going to be tax-free. It's nice to be able to do that when you're up against the next tax bracket, or you're up against the next Medicare premium adjustment, which is like 182 for married couples and about 88,000 for singles. If you go over those amounts, you will end up paying more in your Medicare premium. So that is something that you want to be watching as well. So when you want to take additional dollars out, like I have a client that is going to Rwanda because they have been supporting a youth that has with it was a missionary project that is for the Rwanda area. And they continued past her graduation and continued to support her through her college period. And so now they took out a chunk of change to be able to travel to first to Europe and then into Africa to pay for, or to be able to pay for this trip. Or you may have a remodeling project that you may want to be paying for, or need to purchase a new car. So having a bucket that you can go to that isn't going to increase your taxes is a good strategy to have in your portfolio in your retirement plan. I like the Roth very well. And now the companies, many 401ks and 403bs are adding a Roth option, and you do not have to meet the income requirements to use a Roth option within a 401k or a 403b. That is a misconception that I've had to talk with clients about, because they think they make too much money, but it doesn't matter if you're doing contributions within 401k into a Roth. Okay, next slide. So health savings account is another favorite tool. You can use that with your employer, or you can use that for an individual plan. It does require that you have a high deductible health insurance plan of at least $1,500 deductible. It allows tax deductible contributions of $3,600 for individuals, $7,200 for family, $1,000 catch-up contribution for 55 and older. So you're able to put in additional dollars. That is portable. So if you're doing that with your employer, you can move that with you when you retire. It is a good option for being able to pay for medical expenses. So you get back to the Medicare premium tax. If you're making too much money, you can take your pay for things out of your health savings account and not be increasing your taxable income. Because if you're using your monies for medical expenses, it's not taxable income to you. So it is another bucket that is beneficial to work from. I actually had one of my engineers telling me, well, gee, I don't want to use the HSA because I can contribute to the 401k and I don't have to spend that on medical expenses. I can spend it on whatever I want. Well, yes, that's true. But with the HSA, if you spend it on medical expenses, it's not taxable. And the 401k, if you spend it on medical expenses, it's still taxable. So you still want to have that bucket if you have that option to be using an HSA. However, you aren't able to use that HSA once you start into Medicare. You don't get to have both the benefits of the HSA plus the benefits of a lower health insurance premium, besides which Medicare doesn't have a high deductible, not that $1,500. It's much smaller than that. Okay, next slide. So
one question on the definition of high deductible. Is it $1,500 before they cover anything?
$3,000 for a family.
And is it before anything is covered or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay. So there's still a lot of commercial plans that are not considered high deductible plans, right?
Yes, a lot of employers could have two options. They may have the high deductible option
Mhm.
that will allow you to use an HSA, or they may have an FSA, federal flexible spending plan,
Yep.
in which they usually have a much lower deductible, like $800 or $1,500 for the family.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the one advantage to a flexible spending plan is you can have a medical expense up the first of the year, and the employer pays out of pocket for that, even though you will not have accumulated your dollars until the end of the year. HSAs, the money's not there to cover it. It doesn't get paid. And so it depends on if you have a lot of medical expenses for your family. I had one family that had the son had a pulmonary disease, and they hit their flexible spending maximum within the first quarter of each year. So they always went with the FSA. Okay, click.
Hey, I have a
Okay.
follow-up question on the HSA. You mentioned when you get to Medicare age,
Yes.
you can no longer contribute to the HSA, but you can still use the HSA if you have money in there already?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you can use it to pay for your medical expenses. I wouldn't use it to pay for your Medicare premium. For Idaho taxes, your medical insurance is deductible whether you itemize or not. So I encourage my clients to pay out of pocket or directly and not use their savings account for that, because they're automatically getting a deduction for Idaho. They don't get it for federal, but they do get Idaho. So I think that's a better use of all of our benefits working together. And in Idaho, once you hit the Medicare age, you can go to the Idaho Medical Savings Plan, and you can put as much as $10,000 into that a year. That is deductible on your Idaho tax return, not on your federal, but on your Idaho tax return. So that can provide you some additional benefits. And one of the things that I have encouraged clients to do, we're kind of going off on a different trail here, but I'm going pretty quickly through, so I think I can take a moment.
And could you repeat that again for Medicare, since I'm there? What was that? Where can you go do that?
You can do a medical savings account, Idaho medical savings account. You can do that in most of your local banks. They're more familiar with, and so you can put in up to $10,000 per family member that is over the 65 age. And what I have seen with Medicare, your original Medicare plus a supplement tends to run you a little higher, more like $500, versus a Medicare Advantage plan that runs you more in terms of the premium based on your income, or the $170 that it is this year, plus any premium tax that you have on that. And that, when you start at 65, you're usually pretty healthy. But when you hit 80, you may not be so healthy, and you're going to have more out-of-pocket expenses. So I try to encourage people to put that difference between what they're spending on Medicare Advantage compared to what they would spend for a higher policy plan that covers everything, so that they have more dollars accumulated to handle those big ticket items when they should come. I have not seen very many people get through life, especially in the last 5 years, without having some big ticket medical expenses. So I just encourage them to put additional dollars there, especially since it has a tax benefit. Anything to save your tax dollar. Okay,
I have a question about it also.
okay.
Are there limits then about what the definitions on how you use this? Like, for example, whether it's Idaho Medical or if it's the health savings account, if you wanted to install, for medical reasons, a walk-in shower, for safety, is that considered a medical expense, or is it very broken down that you have to be more careful?
You're going to need to be more careful. You're going to have to follow the IRS tax definition of medical expenses.
Okay.
So some of those things are, if you can get a doctor to write you a prescription, which tends to be the case with putting chair lifts or something of that nature into a home. But if it's not medically required, it's a lot harder to be able to make a deduction for that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Helpful behaviors. So click. Start now, no matter what your age is. You can't, okay, slow down. So it doesn't, you're not too late to be able to make impact on what your retirement can look like. So, so now the next one, we can delay gratification. We have a fast food mentality in our society that I want this and I want this now. And the inclination is to put it on credit and pay the interest to make that purchase. So I always encourage people, if they think it's a good buy, is it a good buy when you add the interest price costs onto that? And I would do that calculation before I would make the purchase. And truthfully, we have moved away completely from credit as a means of paying for items along the way. We've even gotten our cars to the point that we are able to pay cash as we make the purchase, but it was putting a car fund aside, and then we would eventually be able to pay. We didn't start off paying in cash, but we worked our way up to being able to pay in cash.
Hello?
Can you mute him?
I'm gonna see, Don, can you mute? Don, can you, oh,
He's off. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. So the next one is create manageable goals. So if you have 100,000 in place right now for retirement and you want to have $1 million in a 10-year period, you better be able to put aside a whole lot of money annually. So is that a reasonable goal to strive for? That is part of what I look at in working with individuals. It's like, where are they at now with what they're saving? What is their age that they want to retire at? And what is the expenses that they're running? And sometimes we have to modify what the expenses are to make the numbers work. So I had an individual come into me that was looking at retiring. There was a huge change coming with their in the department that she was in, and she didn't want to go through that. So we worked with her numbers and knew that I came up with, if you can live within a $5,000 budget, then you would be able to retire at the age that she was at that point in time. So we did the math ahead of time. We did the calculations ahead of time to figure out what her options would be. She practiced her budget for 6 months to make sure that she could live within that dollar amount, because when you're making more than that, you're more inclined to spend what you're making. So what that did is she just was putting the additional dollars aside into savings. So it strengthened her cash position when she retired. Then she goes into her boss and says, if I were you, I would want to know that I don't plan to be here for the next 5 years and you're retooling and reorganizing. And her boss said, can I give you a severance package? Well, we were ready for that opportunity because we had done the math already and figured out that she could walk out the door when she went in to talk to her boss. So that was something that you want to think ahead, and it was a goal that she was able to achieve. She gave herself some time to determine that. Okay, click. So either stay healthy or get healthy. That's probably one of the biggest ticket items that I learned in the CSA program that sticks with me 12, 15 years later. Actually, I think we might be coming up onto 20. Is that you can change your health positions at any point in time. You can become more healthy. You have to have a will and a want to. You have to be focused and intentional. It's not going to happen just because you take a pill. You need to be doing the things, the eating healthy, the exercising, those types of things that will promote good health. And being healthy gives you a better quality of lifestyle, and it also gives you less expenses for somebody that's not taking a lot of medications, doesn't have to have additional equipment. It just is more effective and better use of your monies. Okay, next, click. Okay, be financially literate. I know that I like finances. My sister, older sister, didn't do well with math, got out on her own, screwed up her checkbook so bad that everybody after her, my parents, made us take a bookkeeping class in high school so that we could at least balance our checkbook. Well, it was a good thing for me because I actually liked doing accounting. And so I went ahead and majored, and then I moved over into the financial arena. So, and I have clients that are very engaged and want to participate in their planning of their portfolio and what they're doing. And then I have others that are totally disengaged. They don't really like the numbers, but we talk about at a 30,000 feet level, some of the basic things that they need to be aware of. So, and usually with a couple, you'll have one spouse that's more the financial person and one spouse that's not. On occasion, I get some where both spouses are not. But my focus is that everybody needs to have an awareness and have an understanding, and they need to work on increasing that. But in times like we're experiencing right now where the market's crazy, that might be a time where you want to take a step back and call your financial advisor and get their take on what's going on. I actually had a new individual call me, or not call me, she sent me an email about, is this my account's down? Is this normal with what's happening in the market? So I actually picked up the phone and called her and said, talked with her about, yeah, you're doing about what the market's doing. Actually, you're doing a lot less in a few of your funds, and you're about tracking with one that's more growth oriented. And she was like, wow, I didn't expect you to call me. And my response was, you need to hear me be confident that you're okay. It doesn't come across that way in an email that to say you're okay. And I have one of my 94-year-old calls me kind of regularly in this season when the market's turbulent, for just to hear me say, you're okay, we got cash, you're okay. It just builds the confidence there, because it's hard to understand all the dynamics of what's going on, and you have a lot of different opinions on what's going on. So it's you want an advisor that's going to take it as their job to manage you through this period, this season, and not have to figure it out yourself. Although I do have quite a few of my engineers who want to be in the thick of it and choosing new funds that are going to be more defensive. Okay, next. Plan for emergencies. So having to replace a refrigerator or appliance, having to do car repairs, really shouldn't be an emergency. Truthfully, we should be planning for those things. The things can't wear forever. They're going to have to get replaced. I know when they had the stimulus checks coming out, we had them spent in the week that we received it because our microwave went out, the TV went out, and the ice cube maker in the refrigerator went out. Yes, we had money set aside to be able to provide for that, but it's not typical to have so many things going amiss within 1 week period of time, but they do happen. So you want to be prepared for that. Hello.
Sorry.
Okay, click. All right, so Social Security is a tool and it is a choice and behavior. Click. So Social Security was established in 1935 to address economic security for the elderly through the worker contributions, and your benefits are based on your highest 35 years of income. But you have choices. Click. Which is related to your behavior. So when do you want to choose your benefits? When do you want to start taking them? The earliest age that you can take at this point in time is age 62, but you will have a reduced benefit from your full retirement age. So the earlier, each year you take it early, you will have a reduction up to 25%. And then at full retirement age, which is somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on the year that you were born, you will have full retirement benefits. Then if you delay taking the benefits until age 70, you can increase every year you delay, you can increase it by 8%. And you do want to take it at age 70 because you are not going to get any additional dollars by waiting past age 70. Frequently with a married couple, I will take the higher earner and delay that until age 70 so that they have that high benefit will be available for both spouses if one predeceases the other. So they will have that higher benefit. And then sometimes we start with the other spouse at an earlier time period. And a lot of that depends on your longevity and other factors. Actually, I think we have a Social Security retirement video on the website. It goes into more depth on the changes and the when to take and when not to take. Okay, next. So steps to avoid. Don't get tripped up. I am sure you all have stories, and since there's just a few of us and you can mic in, what are your observations and experiences of people that have made financial mistakes or blunders in their retirement or in preparing for retirement? What have you seen?
My mother-in-law took early retirement from Social Security and continued to work, and it was mostly motivated by a lifestyle, right? She wanted to have that extra money, and in her case, she ended up passing early, so it probably wasn't a bad decision for her, but she was the primary wage earner. So when it was a big issue when she passed, and my father-in-law ended up with a much smaller amount of money to live on based on that decision, which was not what anybody expected, right? So that was the reminder. You can't just plan for what you think is going to happen.
Yeah. Had that conversation today with a client who wants to tweak the way she's taking her pension to take less out of her 401k. And it's like, yeah, you don't have a guarantee that you're going to live longer than your husband. So
yeah,
I don't know that I would go that route, because this approach doesn't give him anything if you predecease him.
yeah.
So those
there's a note in chat from a participant saying pulling out money early from a 401k.
Definition of early, if you pull it out early and you're not 59 and a half, you do get hit with that 10% penalty. That's an ouch. So some 401k plans allow you to take a loan from your own plan, and that's better than taking a bank loan because at least you're paying yourself back that interest amount. That's a consideration. Have had divorcees that get the portion of a spouse's 401k. We set that aside in a qualified domestic orders account, and we have held on to those. I have in some transitions and waiting until they're ready to purchase a home, and you can take it out of that kind of an account without the 10% penalty while it's in the quadro. But if we had rolled it to the IRA, we wouldn't have been able to have accessed it without it having the 10% penalty. Any other observations? Okay. I'm a big believer that you can learn from other people's mistakes. Now you can learn from anybody, even if it's just what not to do or what you don't want to do for yourself. So always finding things that you can benefit your process. Okay, next.
And one more on that is people
Okay.
do want to retire early, like 62. They forget about the big gap in health insurance between 62 and 65. That's a big hole.
It is a huge hole, and it's really expensive to get that coverage. And that's often the conversation we have. I have one that could not tolerate working in the environment that she was in. Well, she was in a hospital scenario with she didn't go all the way through COVID, but she checked out about a year. She retired in 20. First part of 21, she retired because she just couldn't handle the pressures in the environment and what was going on. So she is well able to afford being retired and to pay that big nugget of health insurance. She just can't swallow that pill. So she went back to work and actually turned out to be kind of a good thing for her. She was asked by the veterinary clinic where she takes her cats to work on a part-time basis. So she was happy. She likes the people, she likes the work she's doing, and it basically covers her health insurance.
Yeah, I've seen that one a lot too. People who planned or took an early retirement package from an employer here in town and then had sticker shock for their health benefits and didn't travel nearly as much as they thought they would because they were spending a lot of that travel money on health insurance.
Yeah. 65 is a well-celebrated birthday because you get to be on Medicare and it's a lot less expensive. So yeah, that is, the healthcare is a huge issue, but you can plan for that. It doesn't have to circumvent you from being able to retire. You just have to be aware of it and make a plan or a strategy. Or you might, with that thought process, choose to delay when you're going to take retirement as a result. Had one that was able to get the continuation and use COBRA just about up to when Medicare starts for that individual. And COBRA is not necessarily less expensive, but you have more things covered from an employer's plan than you would from an individual plan. Okay. All right. So next. slide. Okay, so what you do want to avoid is debt. Save and pay cash even for the big ticket items. Plan ahead, anticipate it, work towards that. Again, it's hard. We're not a society that is geared for saving and buying. Our advertising is let's get immediate gratification. And it is, I think it has devastated our many middle income and lower income families. It has really impacted what they're able to do. And aim to be mortgage free by retirement. 2008-9, when the market had a big downturn, my seniors were sleeping at night because we had the house paid for. That was one investment that would not disappear on them. So that was a point of peace and comfort for them. And so here we are in the next market downturn and super high inflation. And again, having the home paid for gives you a sense of peace. Now, the challenge is that that home price value has been increasing hugely in this valley here of late. And so the property taxes go up with that. But again, having the home and not paying the rent or trying to find a place to be living is a huge relief for seniors. Okay, next, click. Here's one that you want to be really careful with: loans to family or friends. I see this happen as people retire. Now especially if they're over the 59.5 mark and they can access their monies without the 10% penalty, people approach them for monies. So here's my philosophy. I do believe in generosity when it's appropriate. So don't loan what you cannot afford to give away. And don't co-sign a loan that you cannot afford to pay. So don't get yourself obligated in situations which are going to upset your financial picture. Your retirement goals are the utmost importance over what your family needs may be. And I say that because you may have a child that's asking for assistance and it looks like a viable and reasonable request, and you don't want to see them get harmed or anything detrimental to happen. But if that's going to disrupt your retirement and make it so that you are not going to have enough money to live on, is that child going to take you into their home? Or do you want to be living in the home with that child? So those are things to take serious consideration. Think down the road, not in the emergency and the heat and the emotions that are happening at that point in time. You need to act like a bank. When a bank is making a loan, they get it in writing. They get the loan payment expectations, if you're going to charge interest, those types of things. So you need to be formal like that when making a loan to family or friends. So there is an expectation of what you plan to receive. And if you're going to help a child, you need to tie it to financial education. There, the gray. Yeah. Okay, and click there. So back. So you want to tie your assistance that you are providing to financial education. Frequently they get into a problem because they have not been financially wise. They have not been budgeting. They have not been setting aside monies for emergency purposes. So I oftentimes have suggest clients have their children, usually an adult child that's asking, take a Dave Ramsey class to have an awareness and learn some skills. or they can go into Love Inc., which does budgeting and assistance with families. And there's probably other resources in the Valley, but don't just give the loan, tie it to some responsibility. I have an uncle who has a ball cap that says, "I don't loan money, it causes amnesia." So think about that.
That's funny.
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next one. All right, so we want to think outside the wallet. In other words, retirement is not just about the money and having enough money to retire on. It is a whole concept beyond that. So back to our initial conversation about Lee Iacocca, finding his first 3 years of retirement is very stressful because he didn't think outside the wallet. He had enough money to retire, but he didn't know what he was going to do with himself when he did retire. Okay, next. So leisure loses its luster when all you have is leisure. So we want to take a look at what else can you do? What do you want to be thinking about in your retirement years? What are you retiring to? We always think about what are retiring from, but what are you retiring to? What is your desire of what you want to do in retirement? Do you have a sense of service or volunteer? Do you have a passion for some kind of cause or mission that you want to be able to volunteer for and help? What do you want to do? Do you have a bucket list of the things that you want to do with your time? My husband gets annoyed at me, but I make bucket lists and we have conversations about what do we want to have on our bucket list. And it's been kind of prompting and pushing to get his particular interest in what he wants to have in his bucket list. So he retired in 21, still in the COVID era period. Travel was not easy. Didn't want to fight the cumbersome issues with that because, you know, a lot of people retire and take a trip. That's pretty common. And so I said, you know, that's not going to be us because of where we're at. So, and the COVID, I don't want to fight. Neither one of us wanted to fight what the issues would be crossing state lines. So I said, hey, we had that spring spent a ton of time with our neighbors taking out 40 trees out of our yard because we got a western beetle infestation. And so in that time, we discovered how many of the neighbors do archery. So we just shifted gears. He was on the archery team when he was in college, but he didn't keep up with it. So we decided, okay, well, that's your retirement. Is your big deal, your trip is to buy a new compound bow and get yourself set up to be able to do archery with the neighbors. And again, I was real excited at that because he needed to replace his socializing from his workspace to the socializing with the neighborhood. Or do you want to leave an inheritance to your family? I have some that I've got one couple that they want to leave $1 million for the kids. Well, they're got about $1.5 million at this point in time. And then you count their property and we're probably at $2.5 million. That's their primary goal. That is their big objective. And then I have others that they're spending every last dime. And if there's money left, the kids can have it. So it's where's your heart at? I met with one of my clients who's in his 90s that we were talking, and he was one that trying to encourage him to have more of a social life, very intellectual, still editing engineering textbooks, but trying to encourage him to expand. And with our discussions, he started writing his memoirs, if you will. He grew up in Turkey. He went through the, can't remember what that era was, where they were getting massacred, genocide, because he was not Muslim. And then his coming to the States and being at MIT and Harvard, it was quite the experience for him. And it's leaving a lot of information that his family didn't have. Another individual I have encouraged to write a book. Her dad marched in the Million Man March with Martin Luther King. And she grew up some in the South, some in here in this Northwest, as a Black person, and what her experience and feelings were, and being able to share that with her children who, with all the race stuff that has taken place here recently, they were wondering how she was responding and handling that. So opportunities to impart our values and our life space and experiences with the family, because they may not think about asking you those questions, but boy, there are things that I'm like, wow, I wish I would have asked my dad that. Or I wonder why mom was doing this. Now, my older sister has more of that information because she did live with them for the last 20 years of their life. But yeah, it would be nice to have more of that information. So encouraging, and then a lot of clients move close to their grandkids. They want to be involved and be engaged with the grandchildren. And then there are others that say, I have raised my kids, I'm done. So what is it that you want to do in retirement? And you need to think about that before you have this empty page with nothing to fill it. You need to decide what you need. You want to have a purpose, a reason for getting up in the morning. And so looking and evaluating what that would be. Okay, next slide. So I am going to interrupt your activities and ask you to write a letter to your future self. And what is it that you would like to say to yourself for your retirement? What is it that you would want to avoid? What is it that you would want to experience? Next slide. Some of the things to give consideration to is, what's your bucket list? Where are you going to have fun? What is your why? What is your purpose? How are you going to take care of your health? What are you going to fill your time with? How are you going to prioritize your time? Those are some of the things that just, what do you think you want to be doing with your time? I know, well, practically everybody I have in clients that they want to travel, but I do have one pharmacist that she did her travel as an itinerant pharmacist and traveled the country while she was still working. So travel has no appeal for her. So take a few minutes and think about what it is you think you would like to do with your time. You have about 3 minutes. What do you want to be doing, accomplishing, or experiencing? Okay. Would like to move to the next slide that will go with where we're at.
Oh, we lost D. Hang on, let me see if I can. Oh, no, I can't take over.
Okay.
Okay.
So what we can just share from here, what thoughts did you have? Anybody want to step
I
up?
can go first. I took a little bit different tact.
Okay.
I said, it's more of a thank you letter.
Oh,
Thanks for eating well, exercising, and making your health a priority. Thanks for setting aside enough resources for me to enjoy retirement traveling, spending time with grandkids, and experiencing new things.
okay. Okay, that's good.
So I'll go. And I'll admit something that I struggle with too is one is I spend time with my children and future grandchildren, right? We don't have those grandchildren yet, but we're thinking about how we can be helpful to them as our parents were helpful to us. And it's especially hard now with childcare being what it is.
Mhm.
I expect I will stay involved in an organization like Learn, if not Learn, advocating for caregiving and aging issues. It's my passion and I think my retirement job, candidly. And cruising and traveling, we like to do that kind of, that's leisure for us, seeing new cities and trying new things. And it's an interesting challenge for me when I think about how long I likely will work because I like to work, and balancing that with my desire to do these things that require energy, not just money, but energy that I may not have when I'm as old as I may be when I retire. So that's my challenge is
Balance.
is balancing that and really understanding, is that a realistic goal, or am I setting myself up for disappointment, and do I have to be more thoughtful because by the time I can do that, maybe the grandkids will be too old, or it's an interesting thing of what I want versus where I think I might be when it happens.
Well, Dara, you are the busiest person I know. Have a ton of activities and projects and things that you're engaged in. I would say HP might go by the by.
Before I'm ready. Yeah, no, well, and HP, my retirement plan doesn't necessarily include HP, right? When I say work, it's not necessarily with HP, right? As you know, I have other things, but I like to work, right? And so that whole concept of retirement, I believe I would fail retirement. You and I have had this conversation before, right? People fail retirement. They aren't satisfied with a life of leisure. I don't love leisure now. I really like to work, so
Yeah,
I have to be honest about that with myself.
Yeah. So I have a exercise I have my clients do that scores leisure, pleasure, connection, family, friends, inspiration, development, and personal growth, and then work. So there's 4 different topics. Okay, and it helps them get an idea of where they're going to need to focus on their retirement. And it also helps when you're looking at the 2 spouses together, what they should be focused on. So my husband's score, he starts at play and leisure. Yes, that's the slide. He starts on play and leisure and goes straight down to work. Mine starts low on play and leisure and goes straight up to work. So we have a common area in the connecting and the personal development. So we do some crossover there. He's got a ton of hobbies that he can keep himself busy with while I am working. one of the advantages to my job is have laptop can travel. So we don't have to be here in the office. I'm like you, COVID has really showed me I need to continue to be working. I need the social interaction and I need the mental stimulus of working and assisting people with their retirement. So, but do I have to be the one that's hands-on with all my clients? No, that's part of the things I'm looking at, is bringing in a junior advisor to be able to mentor and doing business for retirement purposes, more relationship oriented versus transaction oriented, and be able to hand off, be able to step back some from the business. But I'm going till I'm 70 and then I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. So I'm interested by that tool that you mentioned. Is that something that's publicly available, or is it something that you have to purchase, or could somebody purchase it from you?
It is actually not my tool. It is in Mitch Anthony's book, New Retirementality. So it's retirementality. He has a number of tools that are very effective for kind of processing and thinking and starting conversations for couples. And because you don't want to wait till your last day of work to figure out what you're going to do with your time.
Well, and
really need to,
and this contributes, I mean, you mentioned it early on, but there's a whole wave of gray divorce, right? It's like,
yeah,
if you haven't figured out, you've been spending time apart every day, working separately and having your own stuff. And then all of a sudden that world shrinks so much. And there's a huge, I won't call it an epidemic, but there's definitely a trend of gray divorce.
It's called the gray tsunami.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's having half the income, twice the spouse. So,
yeah.
So it is an adjustment that you have to make to having and we saw a lot of that within COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People trying to work 2 jobs from home, having kids at home, and they were expecting a spike in divorces when COVID kind of settled out and the life opened up again.
I think they're seeing it too, actually.
Yeah.
I've started to see some data on that, and it's looking like it is happening as expected.
Yeah. Yeah. So knowing that that's what you're going to be contending with, then it is, what do you do? To be able to plan for that, accommodate that. I know couples that we have figured out they both need to have their me time. And so they have different places in the house that they go for their me time. And you can't access that unless you've been invited. So it's just kind of working out some patterns and some options. The neighbor has a wonderful workshop next to their home. He does some fantastic work that he's challenged. He's working from home, and then he also works on these projects. But his desire is to give his wife projects to do, and that doesn't set too well. When she got newly retired, she's like, I'll figure out what I want to do. Thank you very much. But it's because they're fairly newly married too. So they didn't have a lot of conversation about, but his workshop is his space that he takes. She does a lot of the gardening. So you just each couple has to figure out what's going to work for them. But it comes with some planning and some discussion, and it is, and you want to have these discussions where you can talk about it, and then you don't have to have a decision the next day. You want to have some time to be able to ponder, to mull it over, and to think about. Yep, that's good. The next slide's fine. So that is where I am currently at. That's my disclosure statement, and the final slide, questions, which I think we've been asking along the way, unless there's any other comments or questions. people have at this point.
When would you recommend an individual or a couple see a financial advisor to start their retirement planning?
When they get married.
Right. As soon as possible.
Yeah. Truthfully, getting youth started early when they're in their jobs, starting, putting the money aside, getting it matched, that makes such a huge difference in what they can do for retirement. So those are some of the basic things. And then having an agreement on their spending plan. That can be tumultuous and is one of the top reasons for divorces happening. So having conversations there. However, I know Percy does their retirement workshops. You have to be within 5 years of thinking about when you're going to retire. I think that's when you can start fine tuning, probably 5 to 10 years out, starting to fine tune what you want to do specifically. Definitely you want to have something, be thinking about it within the year before. The more runway you have, the more choices you have, and the more informed choices you can make. I had one individual come into me who had already retired, and we ran her numbers. And I'm like, I came back to her and said, she was a nurse, fortunately. And I said, gee, can you work part-time at the place you just retired from? And it was an option for her. And so she did go work some part-time hours. I have seen individuals work part-time until they hit their required minimum distribution age, which used to be 70 and now is 72. When they get to that point, they don't want to work. I have seen, the extra money from working has been nice. Now they're doing their RMDs, and that kind of replaces the work that they were doing. I've seen that multiple times. A shift in what their attitude is and what they want to do with their time. Yeah. So yeah, that's sooner is better.
I have a question. Back to the health savings accounts. And maybe I misunderstood this. At work, they do offer a health savings account, but I get my health insurance an outside source, not through my work. And so I was told I could not use that. Could you clarify that one for me?
Okay, so you get your health insurance outside of your work environment. What's your deductible?
I have none.
You don't have a deductible?
I have DIC champ from the VA because of a husband who passed away 100% disabled. So I
Okay.
get what's almost like TRICARE. The champ
I was
VA
just gonna
is
say, it sounds like TRICARE. So no,
Uh-huh.
you're not eligible for an HSA because you don't have the high deductible that's required to be in place in order to do an HSA. However,
Okay.
you can do an Idaho medical savings account that does not have a deductible requirement.
Excellent. Thank you.
What other questions does anybody have today?
See, there's a comment in chat. Let's see if there's another question. Oh, it's Don's comment. Accumulate. It might have been there a while.
Well, you have to have something to work with.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I knew enough when my middle sister, the one just younger than I, that you needed to do this. So I got her up against the wall literally and said, you will start matching or putting in all the money that you can into your employer's investment account and at least the match. So you get the, and that was 40 years ago. And
Wow.
the woman is frickin' wealthy. So I wasn't a financial advisor, but I knew enough. If she started when she was 24, she would do very well for herself.
Well,
And I wish more people would do that for themselves.
it's hard when you are getting out of college and you have so many expenses and you have to create and make things happen. And it is difficult to put the dollars aside. Now, I have seen, starting to work with the kids of my clients that are getting out. And because the parents have put money into their 401ks, they already know what that means and what that looks like. And so they're actually repeating the pattern fairly quickly, getting it into place. So I'm encouraged to see that. I work with youth that have aged out of the foster care system. And those are the ones that I struggle to keep on the straight and narrow. Let's just have an emergency reserve. Who's talking about retirement? We're just talking about an emergency reserve, and not spending everything that you make. So that, you know, one young lady I work with, it's like she gets paid, is fill up your gas tank and go to the grocery store so that she could make it till her next paycheck. But if she doesn't do that first, she's out. Her dollars disappear. She had a flat tire one morning. I got a call at 6:30 in the morning. Mind you, I live 45 minutes out of town. Like, what am I going to do to help you? So, but she needed to just talk it through with somebody. And she makes a comment. She says, maybe I need an emergency fund. Well,
Yeah.
deciding on an emergency fund before when you need it is a little on the late side. So anyway, those are the ones that it's harder to slow down their desire for things because they usually have had a pretty deprived life. So it's helping them strike that balance as much as possible. But yeah, and those are the ones that I really don't want to see at retirement, because if they don't get a clue soon, they aren't going to get a clue. That's the challenge, but it's rewarding work.
And I like to see that we're starting to see glimmers of some financial literacy education in schools, not nearly what is ideal, but they at least have a vocabulary that I will admit I don't think I was given access to in a school setting, right? So.
Right. Well, I know I worked with the Financial Literacy Coalition for a season, and one of the things that we worked on, when they started to require 4 math credits for graduation, they put in a financial planning piece that could be called a math class. And they did pull some materials from different organizations. And we went in and taught some different parts of, so I did some of the things on finances and taxes, gave them some ideas of how to teach or present. But it's up to the schools whether they are going to offer a financial planning math class or not. It's not a required, but it is an option that they did get through the Department of Education.
And probably the people who take that class are the ones who least need it, right? Because they're already interested. Sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be under basic skill sets, like when we always had, shop and home ec classes, whatever. I mean, I remember, I'll say my sophomore year of high school, I'm 63 now, so that's how long ago this all was, taking the best class called business, but it wasn't business. It was how to write checks out, how to do a budget, how to buy insurance, your basic car insurance, whether or not you needed term or life. I mean, he took us through the basic life processes for what we needed to know how to do once we graduated high school. And I have kept all that all these years. I mean, I still longhand, I write out 2 checks a month, basically. I fill it out, write out, the 100, put my little 00, right, exactly like we had to do in that class, because every little thing he taught us. I mean, breaking down what you need for an insurance policy. I never had any problem thinking about which type of insurance and stuff, we needed. And, brilliant teacher. And those are the
Mhm.
classes these kids need. I mean, that should be math 101, or at least it's the requirement before they ever graduate high school.
And there is a class in the West Ada School District called Personal Finance that is most of what you just described, Karen. And of course, it depends. I don't think my daughter had as brilliant of a teacher as you did, but she had a good teacher and it was a good curriculum. And we augmented it at home, as I'm sure you can imagine. But what we discussed is most of the kids who took the class were the ones who were already interested in some way in accounting or already had an affinity for math, right? It's not a requirement, right? It's an elective. And so that's where I think we still have work to do, because it could be so much better.
I think they should rename it to life skills.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
All
This
these
is what
things
you're
under
going to need to know.
Yeah.
life skills classes are essential.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of what we do with the foster care group with the organization, is teaching a lot of those life skill classes and then mentoring them along the way with those steps of what they need to do. So we're doing meal planning and grocery shopping. Some of those, what can we, don't buy shrimp because you got to get through 2 weeks and that's not going to get you very far. Some of those kinds of choices and being aware, and having some basic go-to things in your shopping list. So, and never go without a shopping list. That, the young gal I work with is like, you get 2 impromptu purchases. The rest of that has got to be on your list.
Well, and actually, while that's critical when you're in that kind of a financial situation, it's not a bad idea when you're at any age, right? To have that list and try to avoid those impulse purchases and the unplanned expenses. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, so I decided I can't afford to do grocery shopping with her and then do it myself. So I grocery shop with her, which means I have gone to Winco, which has been my I have left things behind because you have to sack it yourself. So I have not gone there. But when my grocery bill was like 2/3 of what I've been paying, it's like, okay, we're just gonna suck it up and go.
It's a good store. Well, I'm going to kind of wrap us up
Okay.
as we're nearing the 5:30 mark. Peggy, as always, your expertise and your style of presentation, I greatly appreciate. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your recommendations with all of us today. I know this information will reach much further distribution than those on attendance today, but we all enjoyed it as well. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm always happy to share. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 20, or it's hard when it's a big group on a Zoom kind of platform.
A little less personal for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, I'd like to also make another thank you and shout out to our sponsors, Oasis Senior Advisors. I work with them. I've worked with them several times myself for my clients, and I greatly appreciate their professionalism and all that they do for their clients to help them meet their needs, as well as a Mind for All Seasons. What they're doing in a Mind for All Seasons is really on the front edge of brain health and the things that we all need to be doing. So thank you to our sponsors. And then as soon as I get the right place with my mouse, would like to just invite anybody who is not already on our Learn email list to join. You will get a notice after this presentation that is an invitation to become a member of our subscription list, but only if you acknowledge that you would like to be a part of that. Check your junk mail folder if you don't see it in the next couple of days. Dara is so prompt with that. So beyond that, if you don't see it, it's not, you haven't checked your junk mail. Upcoming events. So happy to report. We've got our summer schedule out here as well, doing just a few less presentations, as summer is a hard time to get people to attend classes. But as everyone knows who knows Learn, is that we do record these and put them on our website so that you can view them at any time, night or day. Send the links to your friends, send them to your family. And if you're, if it's possible and one of these hit the interest spot, please join us for one of these future presentations. And with that, I bid you adieu and thank you very much for all being here.
Yes,
Thank you much. I
Thank
learned
you.
much tonight. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Thank you, Peggy.
Yes, thank you
Bye,
for the
guys.
opportunity. I always enjoy teaching.